Hi, I'm Lawrence and I'll be your host for today's episode. Today, we'll be having Roy, Associate Product Manager at GXS Bank, as our guest for today. So he will be sharing about his student life in NUS, his experiences in Fintech field, as well as some advices he has for aspiring PMs. Hi Roy, so let's do a brief introduction for our viewers. So could you tell us more about your background as well as what's your current role at GXS Bank?
Yeah, okay, so I recently graduated from NUS. I studied Information Systems in NUS. And I think previously, during my time at NUS, I have a couple of product management internships. I think the first one was at EV charging startup called B. And then afterwards, I spent a year in New York under NOC, under a company called Silverstein Properties and Spire Labs, where I was also a product management intern. And I think right before I graduated, I started a short stint as a program management intern at Mocato. So these are my initial experiences, but now currently I'm a product manager at GXS Bank, so part of their Grow Associate program. So part of my job scope, I'm basically the product manager for lending products. So essentially, we lead the products which are more loan related, such as your credit cards, the recent credit cards that we just released, FlexiCard, as well as our flagship loan, FlexiLoan. So yeah, that's my range of products that I'm involved in. Yeah.
Understand more. There's a lot of things that you have been doing leading up to before your role.
Yes.
So actually, today's filming, we actually brought you back to your old campus,
yes,
at NUS. Yeah. So being back into U-Town, give you some reminiscence of the university days, right? So what are some key highlights of your uni life that you had?
Yeah, okay, I would say, I'm not sure this, I guess good and bad highlights are both. So I guess I started uni, I think in 2020, so I think my whole batch, we kind of spent the first year, I think most people now you guys have orientation and stuff like that, but then we spent our orientation mostly at home, in Zoom calls and stuff like that. So that was our very first experience of uni. So I think it started out not as ideal, but I think throughout the time, I didn't stay in hall. So I think mainly I made a lot of friends through joining NUS Computing Club as well as NUS Volleyball Club. So in NUS Computing Club, I was the vice president for a year. So basically, I was leading the welfare initiatives as well as the sports initiatives in computing. So I think if you guys ever see those free, those kind of free snacks or free ice cream or free bubble tea they have in computing, essentially our batch was the one that managed to start drive this whole initiative. Yeah, so that was computing club, and volleyball club I was doing part stuff, so kind of designing poster, doing Instagram related, marketing related stuff. So I think that was really fun. So I think even though it didn't really start out ideally, I think eventually I think made a lot of friends on the way. But I would say the main key highlight was getting the chance to spend my time in NOC itself, so spending a year at NOC. So I managed to spend a year in New York, made a lot of friends, experienced a lot of things that US has to offer. And at the same time, I think more professionally, I think because as a product manager, product management intern, most of the time you're only given 3 or 6 months in a row. But for NOC, I spent a whole year there. So I think that really gave me the kind of exposure and a lot more understanding towards the role, and also the ability to be able to kind of carry a product or carry launches of features from the start to the end. So yeah, but I think in general, those are key highlights. NOC, COVID life, and a few things along the way.
I see. Yeah. So, despite having been in uni in the COVID pandemic situation, I think that you actually made full use of your whole uni life and made it very interesting and fulfilling. So I think that's something that is to be proud of. Yeah. Okay. So actually, another thing that I want to seek out from your advice is what advice would you give to undergraduates who are looking to boost their portfolios? Especially before securing their first internship, because based on what you mentioned, right, you actually have a lot of experiences and a lot of working internship experiences, all this. So could you give some advice to the undergraduates now?
Okay. Are you talking more specifically for product management internships or just in general, securing internships? I think in general, I think just don't be afraid of taking on all sorts of different kind of roles. I think because mainly initially I wanted to do sort of technology consultant kind of roles when I was first trying to get different internships opportunities I can get. But I think I realized that it is difficult for you to find roles if you don't really have a lot of experience. So I would say the first thing is to really try to look through things that you have done in your school previously, or things that you have done, for example for the guys who have done something similar in NS. I know sometimes it's a bit hard or a bit weird to draw experiences from NS, but I would say for example if you're doing some kind of more more leadership related stuff, or more like, I would say, more admin kind of skills, there are certain things that you can take away from these experiences that you can put into your resume. So I think that's one thing. But I think at the same time, I think a lot of people are very caught up in trying to get their first internship role to be exactly what they want to do. Like for example, if I want to be SWE, my first internship role must be as a software engineer intern. But that's not necessarily the case. I mean, like, I feel like a lot of companies have all sorts of different roles, like BD roles, which they don't really look at a lot of like different experiences. So I would say like go for those kind of roles first, and then maybe if you can try to within your company ask to rotate into a software engineering role or like a product management role, then I think that's good. But if not, I think that's a good start, a good jump start to getting like your first product management role. Yeah. So actually, from my experience, this is not my first internship, but I was basically doing something very unrelated. I was doing more of like a sales cold calling kind of internship as my first internship. So I managed to land my first product management internship mainly because after doing that kind of sales kind of role, I think it was the startup basically I was in Beat Technologies. I think basically they hired me because they saw that I have certain skills in my resume that I put down for that role that really was helpful for my product management role in the team. Yeah.
I see. So is that how you ended up pivoting into fintech? Because I realized that in your previous experiences, you weren't really from the fintech field. You were actually in a lot of the real estate area of side of stuff. So was that the reason how you managed to break through into fintech?
Actually, okay, I would say I would love to have like a nice story of how I entered fintech, but I think in general, I think personally, considering I'm still quite early in like my career, I know for sure that I do want to do product management, so that's something that I anchor myself on. But as to which industry I'm interested in, that's not something I've really ironed out. So I think previously the reasons why I was working more of like real estate tech or basically like even like EV tech things is more because those were the opportunities that were presented to me. So I kind of leaned towards doing those industries because that was what I was in at that point of time. And I think likewise, like when I enter for fintech right now, like it's also because of the opportunities that are given. And I think in general, I think in Singapore, like if you are looking to do fintech, there's a lot of opportunities. I think at least most of the companies hiring now tend to be fintech companies. And I would say that Singapore is pretty innovative in like the fintech space, so there's definitely a lot more opportunities for you to do fintech here. And I think even when you think about progression-wise, I think that's a good industry to be in because ultimately there's a lot more opportunities if you want to like move to other companies as well. So I would say fintech is a good space to work in, and I think it's also pretty interesting and I would say a very innovative space right now. Yeah.
So for the viewers, just have to seize the opportunity to enter if you want to break into fintech. So, but another question I have for you is there like a pivotal project that helped you get into like this area?
Area is in like the product management area. A pivotal project. I would say not exactly. I think I don't think there was really like a pivotal moment, but maybe okay. So initially when I first entered, I kind of wanted to do tech consulting kind of like role. So a bit of like both tech and like business. So actually initially, when I first applied at NUS, I actually applied for a business degree. So I think I was mainly looking at doing things that everyone's talking about, like IB, that's where the big money is. So that was what I was looking at initially. But I think ultimately, I realized that I was more interested in building something or wanting to kind of like create something or being part of that whole product development process. So I think I started leaning more towards roles that are a bit more innovative, so more towards like the tech side, where you're building items, you're building products, building software items. So I think from there onwards, I kind of explored like the different roles, and I realized that I didn't really want to do software engineering. So because I think for me, I think I do like coding, but I think I much prefer like kind of being behind looking at things at like a bird's eye view, like being able to be more involved in like the strategy, the product strategy, or like the product discovery, user discovery. So I think that's why I lean more towards like product management. So no specific pivotal project, but I think in general it was just self-discovery along the way as I took on a few internship roles, as I learned a bit more about like what product management entails. Yeah.
I see. So actually, before inviting you on the show itself, we have some insider news from our publicity team that you may be familiar with some of our previous guests, such as Anna from episode 2 and Jay from episode 5. So could you actually briefly explain your relationship with them?
Yes, it's interesting. Okay, so Anna is a friend from uni, so both of us were in computing club. So we both actually started, I was the PD project director for the freshman orientation week for computing when I was in year 2. Well, I think he was the VPD for like the bash for computing. So I think eventually both of us we had like a very common group of friends then. So I think all of us we decided to join computing club, and that's kind of how we met. Yeah, and I think we're both also very interested around like the same space of like product and basic product management. So I think that's how we really clicked. So that's for Araf, like he's a friend for school. For Jay, actually, I met him at work. So we both work at GXS Bank. And I think it's kind of interesting. So basically, we work very closely on the same product. So basically, we work on our GXS Bank's first credit card, Flexi card. So essentially, I work from the technical part of product management. So basically, I work directly with like the engineers itself. Basically, develop the features from a technical standpoint. Whereby Jay itself, he works with the business side of things. So I think he works more towards looking at marketing campaigns that they're going to drive, as well as looking at like the numbers that basically we're generating for our product when it comes to like profits and like how much revenue we're generating. So I think we are both kind of like product managers for the same product, but working in different aspects. Yeah, so that's like my relationship, like working relationship with like him. Yeah.
I see. So since we are on that topic, let's dive right into in the fintech field.
Yes.
So actually, how do financial regulations influence your product strategies at your workplace? Yeah.
Okay, that's a very interesting question. Yeah, I think that's the one big question that I also had when I first joined. Actually, it was one of the questions that I asked my manager when I was in an interview with him initially before I started the offer. So I think how financial regulations, I would say it definitely plays a big part in how we do our product decisions. And I think because I think ultimately it's kind of like contradicting thing, right? Doing product is something very innovative. You want to build as much as whatever you can, as long as it fulfills like the user's needs, as long as it fulfills like the goals that you want to have at the end of the day. But then regulations is something where there are like strict rules, very kind of fixed onto paper kind of things that you have to abide by. So trying to combine both of them is definitely difficult. But I think one of like the key things that I think my manager really told me and I actually learned from is that I think when faced with regulations or all sorts of kind of like restrictions, I would say your job as a product manager is to see how far you can push that boundary, how far you can play along like the edge. Because I would say people who come, so in a bank itself, you have people that come from credit risk, that come from legal and compliance. So these are people that their job is to be very prudent, to be very certain that you are very safe within like the regulations, and you meet each and everything on like the list, and basically meet it with even more like safety net. So I would say in those kind of scenarios, I understand why you're prudent, but I think as a product manager, because especially in the digital bank space where you're trying to reinvent things, you're trying to be better than, or try to create something that's different from the bigger banks, it's very important for us to look at how far we can push that boundary, see if we could try to create a product, kind of negotiate with them, challenge like the exact regulations that they have, and see whether there's kind of like a Goldilocks zone where you can kind of meet them at the center ground, whereby you are still innovative, but at the same time, you kind of do meet the regulations. So I would say I think one thing that really helped me is to really try to push that boundary. Always ask like, what exactly is the regulation? What exactly do we need to meet? What are the repercussions if we don't meet it? And exactly what are the things that we have to do? What are the things that it's more of like a good to have? So really understanding that is good for you to have that kind of space to know exactly how far you can innovate and how far you can push the innovation for your product. Yeah.
That's a very, very insightful details for us. Okay, so we can't talk about fintech without talking about tech itself. That's what makes fintech fintech, right? So how are emerging technologies, such as AI and machine learning, such as the newly popular DeepSeek, stuff like that. How are these shaping your product roadmaps?
Yeah. I see. Okay. I think one thing I kind of realized is that I think I understand like there's a lot of like emerging technologies such as AI, ML that I think a lot of companies are like rapidly jumping on. But I think personally, I think right now, or at least I feel like while I'm trying to look at these technologies and how they affect like my current work, I think I try to understand more of why do we specifically need it, because I think it is important to jump into the AI. I mean, like to make use of such emerging technologies, but I think it's more important to understand like what stage of the product you're at right now, what the users of your product need, and to see whether AI fits into that. Because I think a lot of what I'm seeing right now is that a lot of people, like oh, I know AI, so what can I build such that I have AI? Instead of like, what is my product? How can I make use of AI or does AI even help to enhance my product? So, for example, right now in the line of accounts that we have, GXS Bank, we are still pretty much in a very early growth, high growth stage where we're really trying to build out and expand our product or kind of like make it a full-fledged banking product. So I think in that process right now, it's more, at least for like a banking solution, at least when we look at banking solutions or when people get onto banking solutions like a credit card or like a loan, let's say like if you don't have like the basic things like you can't even pay for, you can't even tap your card at like any merchant, but then like, I give you this cool AI solution to be able to like read your transaction history and give you a summary. That's useless to you, right? Like it's all these hygiene things that you have to make sure you build well, that you innovate on, that people actually care about. So even if I throw all these cool AI things, I would say that it's not very relevant for a product depending on what stage you're at. But definitely like if you are looking at innovation or you're looking at pushing our products to the next level, like you really have like a very well-built product that is very well tested, customers love, then maybe you can use AI as a way to like further improve that. Then maybe that's a possible reason why you explore AI. But I would say right now, at least for me, I would say implementing AI solutions is definitely something that we think about constantly while we are doing our product development. But whether it's right things that we are like exactly building in our product now, then not necessarily. Yeah, but I would say in general, like AI is helpful for my day-to-day as a product manager, trying to help me ideate essentially just help me think of things to say. Like, for example, if there's a particular problem I have, just dump it into like DeepSeek or like ChatGPT and essentially use that as a way to just start the ideation process. So helpful in like my job as a product manager, but whether it's something that I implement as like a feature, that's something that I feel like it really depends on the stage of your company, what your product is, and what exactly the people who are using your product needs. Yeah.
I see. So it doesn't mean it's fancier, means it will definitely help you.
Yeah.
So actually now like the fintech market, right, from what I understand, is quite saturated actually. So how do you ensure that your particular product stands out as a product manager, and what strategies do you employ to maintain being at a competitive edge since you have so many competitors out there?
Yeah, I would say, I think it's true that the fintech is incredibly saturated. Even digital banks, there are a few big digital banks, Trust, Bank, and there's GXS Bank, and there's also possibly new ones that are coming up, and we are fighting the space where it's already dominated by like bigger banks, UOB, OCBC, DBS. So I would say it is a very saturated industry. But I would say how to be competitive is to really, I think there are a few ways you can go about it. You can either go about targeting a user group that people don't normally target, or you can come up with features that are different or new or fresh within the industry itself. Maybe to give examples, so I would say I think especially for like the banking space itself, I would say it's coming up with new or interesting features will be a bit of like a problem. I think essentially because you are in a very regulated space, so there is a limit. But I think definitely the digital banks, we are having like new innovative ways of approaching the building of like our financial products. But I think maybe, for example, I guess more towards the GXS Bank context itself. So I think how we remain competitive is basically our goal, which is to basically serve the underserved customers. So essentially serving people who, so I think mainly the people that we try to aim are like gig workers or people who do not have like a very a reported or super stable income that will be reported in their CPF. Because basically your CPF is how a lot of banks use the kind of information they use to determine whether I want to give you a loan, whether I want to give you a credit card. So it's your income information. So what we try to do is that we understand that there is a gap, there is a group of people who are not able to get credit because I'm a Grab driver and these kind of incomes are not exactly reported in my CPF. So we try to target these customers, and that's just a niche that we're trying to bring to the bank itself. I think at the same time, we also try to push in new features, so innovative features. So I think a lot of banks these days, when it comes, we try to basically reinvent how banks can repay and make it a lot more friendly for them to repay, make it a lot more flexible for them to repay. So as, for example, for our credit card itself, if you pay like basically like a $15 like fee, so a $5 fee, you can basically delay like your payments to like the next like statement. So basically things like that where we try to like kind of test and kind of like do something very innovative or something new and fresh, like a product like credit card that's already very well built and very well known, and try to see if it's able to kind of pull in customers. Yeah.
I see. So since we are touching on your current workplace, GXS Bank, your current role is actually part of like their Grow Associate program, which is actually quite, I would say it's a quite special program that is quite different from the other big companies' associate programs. Yeah. So could you like give us a bit of details like how it has been different for you?
Yeah. I would say that I think I do have a lot of friends that are huge like OCBC's Management Associate Program, European Management Associate Program, where they have like they essentially have like very clear rotations. After 1 year, you like swap out to like another team and you in like a different office that you don't directly work with. But I think because GXS Bank is not as big, so we do still work in a very like fast-paced kind of like akin to like a startup-y kind of like space where we are really building and everyone is working very closely with each other. So when we have this rotation program, essentially our rotation program works a bit like, at least in my capacity, works a bit differently. So essentially, even though I rotated I'm rotating to like a different team, I am still working on like product items. It's just that while I'm working for like another team, I'm basically getting the kind of experience that could help to better like my product management role. So instead of like a very clear-cut rotation, I'm doing this, then I'm doing another thing next. Like my rotation is in a way such that it really helps me to understand like different parts of banking. Because I think that's one of the things that I feel like a lot of people in bigger banks don't really have the insight on, because you have a lot of people, so like the job scopes are very siloed. But here, because you're working very closely with a lot of different teams, like even though I'm working on like the tech part, building products, I also am able to, through the rotation, know about the credit risk side of things, know about the data side of things, and also maybe like more specifically into like project management side of things. So I would say like there is, I would say it's different in the sense that you get a lot more closure exposure to help you better your role, better my current role, which is product management.
Yeah. So it actually gives you like a more comprehensive overview, can I understand? Is that
yes. Yeah, and I think it's also not only comprehensive, but also a lot more cohesive. Like I'm not just doing one thing and jumping to something else. I'm still doing my things, but now I have more insights because I've worked with other teams that can help, that I'm basically already working on a daily basis. So now I'm putting myself in their shoes to understand what they need on their ends to help me inform like my product management.
I see. So looking ahead, how do you see the role of a product manager actually evolve, in the next few years? So I think then this is something that a lot of people will actually be curious about, since the fields have always been changing. A lot of roles have always been evolving over the years. Yeah. So what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would say, I think when I was thinking about it, I think the first thing that I thought about was, I guess for a role of product manager, it's never very clearly defined. But I think for every single company, what a product manager does is very different from, let's say, like what a Google product manager does versus like what like an Airbnb product manager does. Like they do kind of vary. So I think there is a lot of I guess potential, or I guess irreplaceableness-ish to that kind of like flexibility. Because I think as a product manager, you are essentially, at least the textbook definition, I guess, of a product manager is that you are someone who's in charge of driving user love for that the particular like project. You're supposed to build something that your users want, and like basically you are in charge of basically pulling all different stakeholders to basically come up with something that that your user want at the end of the day. So if I'm going by that, then I would say there's not really a lot of things that could replace that. AI can definitely help you to ideate, help you to make your role, like help to make menial tasks a lot faster. But because the role of product manager is not standardized, it's not like I don't do A, B, C, D in a day. I could be doing all sorts of things in a day. There's no way that like something there's no way you can automate that role. There's no way you can use AI to kind of like take over that role, because you're doing all sorts of things to make the product work. And I would say that's why I would say product management is not really a role that would be very replaceable, or like it's not a role that would kind of go like would not be relevant a few years down the road. So I would say essentially, for basically the role of product management, I think that's something that would probably still be here to stay. As for how the role will be changing, I think a lot of it would be more focused towards, more of like product discovery. Because I think there's a lot of things right now that can be automated, which are like your menial tasks of more the project management things, more of maybe drafting exact user stories by your engineers. Those things you can kind of automate it, but the things that you really can automate is really the problem discovery, more the user discovery stage, where you are going out to like get surveys from your customers, finding out more information, or you are seeing like various patterns in like your data. These are things that you can't exactly really these are things that you still need people to be involved in, and they're very called to what product management do. So I would say definitely a lot more focus would be towards that area, more so than maybe like the latter part, which is more like project management. Yeah.
Okay, so like probably most of our viewers are viewing our episode they want to understand more about being a product manager, or they actually aspire to be a product manager. So could you like give like some what do you feel that what skills are essential to being a product manager?
Okay, yeah. Okay, maybe I'll just start with one thing that I realized a lot of great product managers have. Like, I think when I talk to different product managers, when I see different product managers, I feel like one thing that really good product managers have that is like charisma. I guess like short form like risk. Like they have like net risk, like professional risk, Because I feel like as a product manager, the toughest thing that you need to do is to pull people, different stakeholders to basically kind of campaign, basically to go behind your product and support the product and work with you to basically build the product and how you envision it. And most of the time, these stakeholders don't have the full picture like you. So they may think like, oh, why is this thing even necessary? Because they don't see like, for example, if I'm on like compliance side, I don't see what the engineers are doing. So I don't have like a full picture of that. So being able to pull all these people, get them to rally back behind your product and build an amazing product, I feel like that's one of the toughest things. So I feel like great product managers have a lot of charisma. They're very good at talking to different stakeholders, knowing exactly what different stakeholders need, and being able to come to like a middle ground. So I would say one of the most important skills is definitely like stakeholder management. So that's one of the things that I came to realize, especially working in like a company whereby it has a lot of different teams, a lot of different moving parts. I think it's very important to be able to manage the different stakeholders. I would say I think a lot of another very important skill is also I think more of curiosity and like basically being able to always ask why. So I feel like I do see a lot of product managers also that tend to be very operational. Like when they go about doing their product, okay, someone tell me this, I'll build this. So I based on what I'm given, I just build. But I think a lot of people fail to go before that. Like, why am I even doing this? Why am I asking me to do this? Is this even important for the goal of my product every day? Is it even important to get users, or will users love my product if I build this? So I think that's another skill that I think is very important for product managers to have. And I realize a lot of good product managers, or a lot of like product managers who build successful products, I feel like they're always asking why, they're always challenging. So they're always asking so I think that's one thing I realized. I think whenever I see like my managers or my senior PMs at work, whenever I give them something, they're always asking, wait, why? It gets it's annoying, yes, because like sometimes you're like, oh shit, like something that I've been working at for like 1 week, now they're asking me why. And I reevaluate and realize that this is actually not very important. So I think being able to really build something that is really necessary, because you are given a lot of things to do, you have a lot of like things to prioritize. Being very clear on exactly what's important, why it's important, and how and being sure that you are building something that could really lead to a very tangible increase in like your customers, or like it make people love your product more. I think that's very crucial. Yeah.
I see. And there's one thing that I think a lot of people always have like a misconception or like unknown.
Yes.
So there's a difference between product managers and program managers.
Yeah.
So could you like as a product manager, explain to us what's the difference between the two?
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. Yeah. So I had experience working as a program manager at Untitled as well as a product manager now. So I think the difference is likewise. A product manager is more focused on the why part of things. Like why we're building it, doing more of like the user discovery, being able to kind of find like what are the problems that users are experiencing, more of towards I would say the earlier part of like the process. That's what product managers are focused on. Being able to come up with identify problems and then come up with solutions that could go about solving the problems. So that's what product managers do, the very first part of things. But program managers are more focused towards the more implementation things, more of like how do we go about doing what is needed for us to do that. So maybe just to give an example, because I work with program managers currently as product manager. So basically as product managers, what we do is basically we will go about discovering, identify like hypothesis where we go about like trying to like prove and test out. So based on that, like different like discoveries that we have done on the users or different like hypotheses that we have, we'll go about like thinking of how we can go about building those kind of features or solving those kind of features. So once we have that kind of in mind, that's when the program manager kind of comes in. So they are what you call sort of like project managers. So they basically take whatever you have and essentially basically decide like, oh, okay, for this, like, these are the few people that, we'll probably need to like rope in. So these are the, so past like once the idea or once the solution is kind of like more or less formed, they kind of basically kind of do like the project management part where they kind of watch like the timelines, they make sure they plan like such that the delivery of like the product is on schedule. And for example, if there's any particular stakeholder that needs to come in, so for example, whenever we build a product that requires like the finance or like the compliance team to like basically check or like basically to do some sort of like UAT, that's when the program manager steps in to basically kind of like conduct the UAT and basically make sure that we are, after you do all this UAT, if there are anything called, like if there are any like bugs that are raised, they are being passed on to like the engineers, making sure that whole process of implementing the solution is done well and done within like the ideal like or project schedule, the timelines that are scheduled for like the project. So yeah, I would think in the simple form, product manager focus more on the why, and I would say program managers focus more on like how we go about doing or what is needed to do that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for clearing the doubt that I think a lot of us have, regarding the two PMs. So actually, Roy, so what are some upcoming trends, in the fintech, sector that actually excites you?
Yeah. Okay. I would say maybe I would just talk firstly more towards like the things that I'm working on. So I'm working on like the lending space, so basically loans and credit. So I think in that space, I know previously I was talking about AI and how like at least I would say for right now, like that's something that we don't really like focus on. But I would say in general, there are a few things that I can see how AI could help on lending. So I think when it comes to loans or lending people money, I think the most important thing that every single bank looks at is improving their underwriting process. Basically trying to get the best kind of customers to borrow our products such that there are customers that will pay back, but at the same time there are customers that will borrow a large amount of money and generate the kind of interest that basically give the banks the money. So finding that specific type of customers is always very difficult. So I think one of the ways that I guess AI could probably help here is to basically help to make that process a lot easier, a lot more seamless. So wherever we have basically AI could possibly pull in a lot of different data, from different data points, AI is able to give a very good, I would say a good summary or a very good breakdown of that customer's profile, and basically able to identify any nuances in the profile that the bank could basically think about whether they still want to give like a loan or basically how much they want to give to these customers. So I would say that's a very interesting thing that AI could possibly help in like the lending space. But I would say in general in like the fintech space, I would say I think one of the more interesting things I would say, because it's more relevant to whatever we experience every day, is definitely more like the payments area. I think I think not a specific thing, but I think in general, I think the trend is that payments is starting to become something a lot more frictionless. I think previously, you want to pay, you need to have like exact like credit card, like you need to insert like your card or pay by cash. But I think right now the way that people are making payments, I mean obviously this is a while back, but now you can pay by your phones. Then now people are trying to think of like different things like integrating chips in like a stuff that's able to help you make basically you can able to make payments all these kind of chips and things like this, basically, and also integrating payments in whatever you are experiencing. For example, if I'm in some like random website or any platform, it's very easy for me to make a payment or put in my details and subsequently make a payment for it. So basically reducing the kind of friction, make it easier for people to transact and so to send money across different places. I think that's very interesting. And at the same time, I think this happens behind the scenes that I think a lot of people really tangibly see is that I think integrating of payment systems. So for example, Singapore, I think it's one of the few countries whereby, all the banks have basically like a shared system that they run on, like the fast network, whereby it's very easy for us to transfer like money between like banks. It's very seamless. And I think what we are seeing now is that, as Singapore is looking to integrate with like Malaysia and Indonesia, to make it such that, when I send money to someone in Indonesia and Malaysia, it's almost instant, like I don't have to like wait a few days for the money to process and things like that. So basically reducing the friction when it comes to me actually making the payment and me like paying to like all sorts of people around the world, I think that's something that's very interesting. Yeah, and I think on top of it, I think it's something that has also been going for a while. I think especially when it comes to crypto, I think definitely a I think a greater acceptance towards like crypto, like a more basically more opportunities for people to basically tap onto crypto as like a form of like payment or as a form of money you can use in their daily life. I think that's also something that's an interesting trend, and I think it's something that I'm also like looking at. Yeah.
I see. Alright, so we're actually coming near to the end of the podcast. So are there any last words of advice for our audiences, especially those that actually aspire to become product managers in the fintech field?
Yeah, I would say definitely like I think one of the few advices that I have, I think I mentioned a lot during the podcast, is that I think as a product manager, I think very important to focus on like the whys and lesser more towards like doing the house, less on the operational things. I think the best product managers I see, the most successful people I've seen that do product managers are people who really know exactly what their users want, are able to build exactly what they need, and being able to prioritize in a way such that they are able to build exactly that. So I think that's something that's very crucial. So I think that's for if you're in the product management space, but I think if you're someone who's looking to do like product management, I think definitely, I think one of the advice is that don't be afraid if you don't have any like product management specific experience. I think a role of product manager is very diverse. You do all sorts of things, so don't be afraid to kind of dip your toes in all sorts of different areas, and ultimately slowly shift towards product management. Like you don't have to jump into product management right when you graduate, or you don't have to need specific product management to become a successful product manager. In fact, some of the most successful product managers are people who have experience in a lot of different things. They have done like software engineering, they've done like data, they've done like more of like the business side of things, business development. So I think, yeah, just explore as much as you want. And I think product manager if the role of product manager opens to you, then you can come and join product management side.
Thank you so much.
Yes, yeah, thank you for having me as well. Yeah.
Thanks for coming to today's episode of Lorong Product. Click here for more previous episodes.